was very much the villain of my story, like I was the one who bailed out on a legal career when I felt that it got too hard. I was the one who bailed out on a long-term relationship. For a long time, I just thought that I was this person who just bailed on everything when things got too hard, and that was just always going to be me. And then did a lot of work, and work is so boring. It is so much easier to go get drunk in a bar.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy and life with yours truly, Michael Kahan. Howdy, howdy, howdy. This is an amazing journey of self-reflection, growth, and healing. Sashi has lived many lives, traveled and lived across the world. She was a refugee lawyer, and my goodness, what a wonderful story. Her insights and deep reflections was inspiring to hear. Plus, she's hilarious and a great conversationalist. I had a blast, and I reckon you will too. Sashi Perera is a Sri Lankan-Australian comedian, writer, and former lawyer based in Melbourne. After working with refugee organisations around the globe, she moved to Melbourne to do her master's and fell into comedy. She's now one of Australia's fastest rising comedians. In 2023, she was nominated for Best Newcomer at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. Since then, she's sold out shows in 6 countries, opened for Hannah Gadsby, and made television appearances, including Channel 10's Have You Been Paying Attention and ABC's Montgomery's Guy-Mont Spelling Bee. Her debut novel, Standstill, was released to widespread acclaim in 2025. If you'd like to check it out, it's in the episode notes. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about being a refugee lawyer, calling off her wedding, her wonderful book, going viral, her fertility journey and mental health, learning to love your body again and what she did, new material nights, being flown to perform at a wedding in Rome, rage and breaking the cycle, fake wedding speeches versus authentic speeches, plus plenty more. Before we get into this epic chat, I'd love it if you would share the podcast around, like, comment, subscribe, tell your mates. It really helps grow the podcast and helps ensure I can lock in amazing guests like this one. Okay, cool. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I heard you talk about this, that you got offered a gig to perform at a wedding in Rome. Can you tell me about this? Because this is very interesting to me.
It is the most ridiculous story. It is so, so ridiculous. And it happened in the first year that I was going viral. So there was all these like crazy things that kept happening. And this lady messaged me and she said, "Would you like to come perform at my wedding in Rome?
Yeah.
And I want you to do a roast of me and my new husband." And I
Roast.
yeah, and this is why everyone says like don't check the comments, don't check your DMs, and I'm like there's a lot of garbage that comes through, but this came through, and so I emailed her. We started chatting over email, and then hopped on a call with her, and then I told my husband. I never tell him unless I fully investigate the whole situation, and I was like, "Hey, this has happened," and he said, "Sashi, that sounds like human trafficking."
Come alone. Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, "That is 100% human trafficking." And I was like, "Well, they've already sent me my ticket, so I'm gonna go."
They just sent it to you, or you agreed and didn't tell him?
No, I agree. Like,
Yeah.
as in, like, they were like, "When do you want to come?" And these would be the dates. And so I flew to Italy for like 4 days to go to this wedding, and it
Wow.
was all very strange and fun. Like it was one of the first time. Well, I mean, it's the only time really that I've been flown internationally outside of festival to like perform for someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a very strange experience straight off just going viral on TikTok a couple of years ago.
I have at least 100 questions. This is going to be the entire podcast. What was that? Could they speak English? Was it an Italian wedding? Could you tell me
Yeah.
more about the...
No. So it was an American woman and an American man based in. So I spent much more time with her than I did with him. And then the most interesting thing is that I was telling Sammy J this not Sammy J, Sammy Shah this story one time. Once I was back in Adelaide, everyone was talking about the weirdest gigs that they'd ever done. And I said, well, there was this one time this lady saw me on TikTok and flew me to Rome to perform at her wedding. And he was like, that is a ridiculous story. Who are these people? And he looked them up because I was talking about how it was like quite an opulent situation, like it was an hour outside, outside Rome in this like ancient granary, and we had to give
Cool.
all of our phones in, so we couldn't take any photos. There was an attire guide that they sent to like for like what you have to wear and stuff, and so silly, and then he looked it up, and then the groom was actually being like charged with fraudulent activity at the time. There was this website on him,
Oh my God.
and I've been trying to track what's been happening since, but there hasn't been much more information on it. But I was like, look, I got paid, so
Oh, you got paid before.
I
Smart.
I got paid. I was like, I'm not getting on the plane unless I get my full fee ahead of time because it's just too far to go for something to go wrong.
Okay, I got more than 100 questions now. I like how like Sammy, I've spoken to him, he's been on the podcast. Great guy. And I like
He's
how
so great.
he's like, that's ridiculous given like his life experience and all the stuff that he's done. He's like, no, 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 Sashi, that's ridiculous. What is a roast like at a wedding when you like, and this sounds like a very fancy event. Do people find it funny or they're like, oh my, that is ridiculous?
I think so much of that skill is in chatting to them to understand that they don't want what they think they want. So I just said, so in the pre-interviews and stuff, I just said, I know you said that you want a roast, but I want you to picture this like you're all dressed up, your best friends are here, you're having a really good time. Do you really want barbs thrown at, even if they're funny, like,
Yeah,
do you really want that thrown at you and your husband? And so the more that we talked about it, the more she was like, okay, maybe just do like a set. That's fine. So I talked her down from the roast to just like 20 minutes of entertainment, which
that's
I
cool.
preferred.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I've two things spring to mind. When I was at a wedding, and it was not like an event. I've never been to an event like that, but it was more like a fancy wedding.
yeah,
And he won't mind me saying this. This one guy was like quite bogan, and he has no filter, and he just went off with like it was white. It was I can't believe the words that came out of his mouth. They were crazy. He just said everything. He bagged the crap out of the families, the in-laws, and half of us were dying. Like it was probably the funniest thing I've ever heard. But the
yeah,
more affluent people are like, this is outrageous. We cannot believe we heard this. And I was
yeah.
like, yeah, it really like split the crowd talking about comedy. I've never
It
quite, yeah,
I think that's the thing, like you're really risking splitting the crowd because half the room will probably find it really, really funny,
yeah.
but the other half will just be like, it's their wedding. What are they doing? This isn't right, So I was just like, wouldn't you rather an activity that unites the room rather than divides it?
My dad, because everyone, there was a lot of pressure on me for my wedding. They're like, it better be funny. And I heard this from everyone. I'm like, oh God, I don't know if I can write a funny speech. So I wrote the speech, it was okay. And I gave it to my dad, and he just gets this pen and he puts the red on and he just goes cross, cross. And he crossed
Oh,
out like 60% of it. And he's like,
whoa.
yeah. And I'm like, is it that bad? And he's like, we're not doing this at the wedding. I'm like, oh, he's like, it's not your mates. There's other people there. You can't do it.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm not sure if it was the right decision, and there was literally like no jokes, but we had a great time outside of the speech.
Look, I think it is. Like I work with people who have speeches coming up every now and then, and my main thing is it's really hard to do in jokes at like a wedding or a birthday or anything like that. Like you want to be able to be relevant to the whole room. Like you
Yeah.
don't want them to like be tuning out halfway through your speech because they're like, oh, this is just for his mates, really. Like I'm not really included in this situation.
Mm.
So I think it sounds like you made the right decision.
Look, we had a great time, but also they're like fake in the sense like everything I said was true and real. And we'll
Yes.
talk about your previous wedding, which is also a really interesting story. But you're almost like saying a speech. And I think I was more authentic than we went to like 10 weddings in a row. And a lot of them were like, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. You're my best friend. And that's
Yes.
true. But it was literally the
Yeah, yeah.
exact same. And you're saying it to the crowd. And it was
Yes.
so not authentic. And it was like, I know what they're going to say next. It's like,
Yes,
when you
yes, yes,
see
yes.
a stand-up comedian, you know what the punchline's going to be. and it was so bad. And then you've also got people, very few at ours, we cut ours down, but
Yeah.
they're like, they don't know us. Like I can just say, like, they don't care regardless. But you're right. I think I did the right thing, but
Yeah.
these things can be so fake and so unbearable.
They can be really fake. I think there's a lot to be said about a good, authentic speech, though. Like, God, I love a really good speech where I learn something about the person
Mm,
and learn, but it's also so hard. I think what happens is everyone gets really, really nervous and then they all Google the same information and then end up with the
ChatGPT.
same freaking quote that love is patient, love is kind. Like, ah, and you're just
Yeah.
in the crowd being like, no, it's not.
Yeah. You're wrong. Boo. I've
Yeah.
always wanted to boo a speech. I don't have it in me.
Yeah.
How how did you get into speech writing or helping or
I just really like doing it. I used to do this course, like a corporate course. I don't know, there was like this online platform that collapsed a couple of years ago, and I did like three the three key ways to write a good speech. Like, so it was really working with people on that, where it's just like if you're doing a presentation or whether you're doing a wedding or you have a big birthday, whatever it is, like it so much of it comes down to just three key things. It was like practice is number one. I think even with stand up, right? Like we pretend that we're all winging it up there.
yeah,
Some of us are, to be fair. If you're very, very talented or you've been doing it for a very, very long time, you can do that. But most of us are still practicing through everything.
yeah.
But it's like it's not cool to practice and it's not cool to prep and it's not cool to think ahead. Um, and I try to just really encourage that where it's like, hey, sit down and think about this a month before you have to do it because your first idea won't be necessarily your best one. And don't you want to, yeah, So yeah, I just really enjoy that aspect of it where it's just kind of like, let's make a good, funny speech. Let's do it.
I think that's so important. And we were talking off air, even with screenwriting, sometimes before I
Yeah.
put pen to paper, I actually have to speak it out loud. So my poor wife,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm thinking this, I'm doing this. And then by the time I've spoken it, even if she doesn't say a word, it changes so much. And I guess that's also the same with
Yeah.
stand up as well. Like
Yep.
whether you put pen to paper or pen on you write on your phone or whatever, it's going to change so much. And that's part of my process. And you're right, often
Yeah.
the first thought is not the best thought. So I assume, yeah.
It's not, but it's also so important to start because you're not going to get to the best thought unless you have the first thought. And I feel like people just like put it off, put it off, put it off. They're like, I'll think about it later. And then they're like, oh, there was that time that he wore cowboy boots and got really drunk. And you're like, not that one, but a good start. Next idea.
So how do you go? So I've heard some comedians talk about this. They believe in this joke, it bombs, or it doesn't do that well, but like there's something there. And they just keep on working on it. Sometimes it can take a long time, and then eventually they do it and they smash it. How are you when you're testing a new joke? Potentially that waiting period of before you feel it's good, or to
It's
abandon it.
It's so hard. It's so, so hard. And sometimes you will, you have that in screenwriting, right? Like kill your darlings. Like you have it hurts when you have something and you're like, that this is really, really good. But for whatever reason, it could be the writing, it could be the content, it could be your angle on it. It just doesn't work. So unless you tweak that right, correct thing and make it work, you kind of actually have to let it go. And so it depends on how many times, how committed you are to the bit.
Are you brave in that regard? Because you've been doing comedy for a little bit now. You know what works, you know what doesn't work. Trying new material can be quite scary, especially as you've built yourself, a platform and all of that. How do you go with that?
Trying new material is one of the hardest things because I learned that after doing my second solo show, I'm now onto my third one, but I wrote notes to myself this time about how it felt because you're leaving this perfect piece of work that's been nutted out. Well, in your mind is perfect. You've loved doing it. It's been nutted out. You know where all of the laughs are. It feels so good. And then you just put that away and you start from zero again. And
Mm.
it is so hard and scary. And you get up on stage with a new set and you're like, is this funny? I don't know.
And how do
But
you? Oh no, sorry.
no, I was just going to say I wrote notes to myself from first how hard that was to do it and how awful it felt and how scared I felt that I was never going to write a good joke again. And then there was the first time a new joke connected in a room and you're like, oh, this is the feeling that you're chasing. And now I think the longer you do it, the more you know that it will come. It's just going to take a while to do that.
It's very wise, very hard because there's people that have been doing comedy for 10, 15, 20 years and they know what works. And sometimes they say the exact same joke. And because there is that, fearless element, it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And I really admire a comedian when you know they're good and then you see them trying new stuff and they might not get any laughs whatsoever because they're also trying to impress, or you guys are trying to impress us. And it's, yeah, I think it's a really interesting relationship with bravery and courage because it wouldn't come out all the time. Maybe the set's not going so well at the start and you're like, that's it, I'm just going to bring out some of my old material to win the crowd, and you can play it that way. Or sometimes you're like, I just can't do it for whatever reason. So I really admire people trying new
That's
stuff.
also, I feel like that's the kindest angle on it as well. I think there's a large proportion of just pure stupidity to the whole thing where it's just like
uh, uh,
which is also kind of great. But I think that first time that it connects with a room and you wrote something new, it feels so good. So I just didn't want to forget that part of the process because I was like, oh, like if I'm lucky and I get to keep doing this for a while longer, I might have to do this a few more times. So this is what it feels like when you ditch your old show and then you have to write a whole new one. It's hard and it's weird. And yeah, people don't like it when you repeat jokes. It's interesting, like they say, you will go watch a musician play the same 12 songs over and over and over again and be more in love each time. And then with comedians, it's like, oh, I heard her tell this yesterday. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, but that took me like a year to write.
It actually annoys me as someone who's not a stand-up comedian. It's like you put in so much effort and time and thinking, mental energy, all of this stuff, and then, a year later can't do it anymore. It's
Yeah.
not fair. The
Yeah.
musicians have got it
Leave it.
best. Yeah.
Leave it.
Throw it
Leave
in the
it.
bin. But that
Yeah.
being said, I've also heard you on a few podcasts where I think this is one example, would have happened many times, but these two ladies were like, no, say the hair tie joke
Yeah.
again, or you do get that
Yeah.
as well. That's also really
Yeah.
interesting. Tell me the story that I've heard probably many times in that case. I want to hear it again. I always find that very interesting.
It's such a strange balance because people will see stuff online, and I only put stuff online once I'm done with it. Like I don't post stuff that I'm doing rarely, very, very, very rarely. So people will see stuff online and they'll be like, "Yeah, I came for the hair tie joke," or "I know I came for the boundaries joke," and you're like, "Oh, that was 2 years ago. I'm not doing that anymore."
Yeah.
Because everyone else gets angry at me, so it's this weird balance.
I want to pigeonhole the potentially negative comments and all that stuff. But you mentioned at the
Yeah.
start, and this is kind of crazy to me. You went viral very early in at the start of your career, and you got something like 100,000 followers in like 3 months, something crazy.
It
Does
was
your
crazy. I think, sorry, I cut off your
no, no, no.
question.
I was just gonna say, does your life change? What does that look like? And I'm sure you
I
never
think
imagined.
I think I was very lucky because I had 5 years of just complete obscurity, like where I was trying to figure it out and trying to figure out stand up. And, like the first 2 years of doing stand up, you're performing for drinks tokens that I couldn't use because I had my day job. And so I
Yeah,
had, so I had 2 years of that and then started getting paid a little bit more, a little bit here, a little bit there. And it was really like 5 years into starting that things really took off for me when I started posting reels. But I remember like I had 1,000 followers on my Instagram account, and I thought getting to 1,000, I was like, oh yeah, cool. I'm a comic now. This is awesome. I'm officially a comedian. And then yeah, some of the reels started taking off, and it was the account grew to like 100,000 in 3 months. And no one
crazy.
trains you for that. No one really, I don't know. And life does change in terms of you just get to do better gigs, bigger gigs, quicker gigs. So things just started taking off and yeah, it's all just really grown and grown and grown from there. But I'm just really lucky that it wasn't the virality first and then trying to figure out stand up. It was I'd already been doing it for about 5 years, felt like I had a decent handle on it. There's always obviously like very much at the start of the journey, but if it was just going viral and then being like, okay, well, I guess I have to figure out a 60-minute show, I'm not sure how I would have done that.
Yeah, that would have been. I was speaking to this Indian comedian, pardon me, a few years ago on the podcast, and he was saying that because it was quite a new scene, a lot of comedians can grow really quickly there, and they can just post like one joke, but they don't have more than 5 minutes material. And
Yes.
so he's a really funny comedian, and he decided not to post that much. And he's like, I know I can blow up, but I want to be doing this. And we were talking about this off air. I want to be doing this for the long term. And I can see
Yeah,
the trends, what's happening, and I'm going to get these gigs that I might not be prepared for. And I was like, that is really mature because
so
I don't think I
smart.
would do that. You just like, gimme, gimme, gimme. And it would be really hard because then there's also expectations of you. And we mentioned before, sometimes people can have massive audiences, but they haven't honed in on the craft and they're not going to get repeat people watching their show as well. So it's this fine line. So I think
Yeah,
it came at a great
yeah.
time for you as well.
Yeah, I think I was just very, very lucky that those two came hand in hand for me, which was very lucky because the other thing that happens is, once you start doing a few spots on TV and things like that, it then becomes really difficult to test new material because you're in front of large audiences and then they see you be good with your old jokes. And so when you start doing new material, they're like, who's this person? She sucks.
I'm sure it's not as bad, but as we said before, it's about you tested the jokes so many times, you know it works. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just trying to find all of the funny bits again just gets a little bit harder and a whole new thing to navigate.
while this springs to mind, you just said you've done your third solo show. What's that
Yeah.
like knowing that you, within whatever period of time, you managed to pull out quality content for an hour or so?
It feels just lovely. Like I'm so excited because I'm like almost done with the Australia shows. There's one more in Sydney and then but I get to do it so many times because I'll go to New Zealand, Singapore, Sri Lanka, the UK and the EU, parts of the EU. And I'm just excited about getting to do that so many more times, but also I'm already worrying about, okay, what am I going to do for Comedy Festival next year? How
Yeah.
do I turn this around again? And how do I write in tandem with performing? Like, because you're performing your now show and you're thinking about your future show. So it's just that strange thing of two parts at the same time.
Can you bring in new stuff into your current show, or it won't work for the show that you're currently doing?
I'm trying to do like kind of 5 minutes up the top of just new material that doesn't really matter. So it's just kind of like it's just a quick chat about what's going on or something I've thought about that day, and then get into the show. And I'm hoping out of those bits maybe something comes up, but
Oh,
we'll see.
that's very smart. That's great.
Well, it's because it's like it's basically the freshest the audience is. They're so excited. They're not really paying attention to what you're saying in the first 5 minutes. So it's fine.
But it's also interesting because sometimes I know people are paid to see you specifically, but if you
Yeah.
don't do great at the start, you can lose the audience. But I guess you're riding that wave of a few minutes, you can just pump out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just a quick 3 minutes is
Yeah.
like, how
It's like,
crazy is
guys,
the
it's just quick. I
trend?
just need to get this out of
Yeah,
then. I've
yeah.
I've also seen stand-up comedians over time where they pull out a pen and paper and they're like, guys, know this is gonna suck. Hopefully there's some gold. And they say their joke and they go, was that okay? And they're like, okay, I'll try that again. And they like cross and
Yes.
they do to play with the crowd. Because people
Yeah.
understand.
And that's why I think it's really good, like when comedy clubs, particularly, like they'll just have new material nights to kind of encourage people, and people come along to those, and those are probably some of the most supportive audiences. So those particular nights are really, really useful.
Yeah, that and then it encourages the mindset as well. People
Yes.
know. I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
I want to go back to before you went viral because you mentioned 5 years. People probably wondering what you did before, and you have one of the most interesting lives that I've come across. And you were a refugee lawyer, which is a massive transition. We'll build up to that. You also have traveled around the world. I wrote down all the places that you've lived, but I think you were born in Sri Lanka, then you were in Dubai, then Perth, then there's other places like Egypt and Kenya and Thailand and maybe Oman. And I probably skipped about 10 other countries. That just blows my mind. But maybe we'll start with what got you into wanting to be a refugee lawyer?
It was a strange path. I think I really wanted to be a lawyer. And so when I went into law, what I found was, what I was surprised to find was that there was no areas that really lit me up. Like, and I talked to colleagues where, they really, really loved criminal law or they really, really loved tax law, or they really, really loved corporate law, whatever that was. I didn't have an area that really grabbed me apart from refugee law, which I really liked. Like, I liked learning about the different parts of the world, the different problems in the different places, and wanting to help. And so that's where I went into. But I now look back and like, I was in uni while the mining boom was on, you know, there were
For Perth, yeah.
dishwashers doing FIFO, making 100K a year. And there was me with my little textbooks being like, I'm gonna go be a refugee lawyer. It's like Sashi,
Were they
you
making
know,
five? Sorry for cutting off. Did you say people that are doing the dishwashing are earning $500,000 in the
no,
mines?
100. You could clock 100K easy if you were washing dishes. Like there was like skills shortages in Perth because everyone was going to the mines to work up there. Everyone was doing FIFO. There was so much money just like floating around that state. Just none of it found me.
Oh, I'm in the
Bless.
wrong
But
profession as well.
I know, but I was just like, I just want to work in something that I'm interested in. I think I've always thought about careers in terms of longevity, where I know that I'll get bored easy. I get bored very, very easily. So if it doesn't hook me, then I just won't do it. So with this type of law, I thought that it is probably the one that I could work in for the longest period of time without getting bored.
Very interesting. And how did your family? I know a little bit behind the scenes with your book and the podcast. How did your because they were immigrants, they moved from they're originally Sri Lankan, I believe, and then they
Yeah.
come here for a new life. What were their thoughts on you being a refugee lawyer?
They were like, Sashi, of all the types of law,
Yeah.
of all the types of law, you know, I think they were kind of proud because I just said, like, not everyone has the opportunities to do what we did, which is to migrate. Like, people need to flee. People don't have the resources to move countries like we did, you know? So I just was really interested in the area, and I think they saw my passion for it, but they were also just worried because the whole reason we moved was for financial security, and they were like, it feels like you're doing whatever you can to not be financially secure.
Oh, that's amazing. And what I've got also 100 questions on this, but what made them pick Perth of all places or Australia, given so many countries you've been to? I know that was without your parents, some of them as well. Why did they land on Perth?
I mean, it's really the reason we were in Oman and Dubai is because the Middle East is one of the main gateways out of Southeast Asia, like South Asia. As in, so for Sri Lanka, you can't migrate directly from Sri Lanka to Australia unless you have certain skills, certain experience. And so for my father to get that experience, he moved to first Oman and then Dubai, and then we moved with him. So he was working as an engineer. And
Okay.
then once he had the requisite level of experience working outside the country, you can apply to for permanent residency visas around the world. So we actually applied to like Canada, the UK, the US, and Australia. I think New Zealand as well. And
Yeah.
then it was kind of like a roll of the dice of which application worked out and what didn't.
Because New Zealand's meant to be much easier than the other countries you've said as well. Did you
Yeah,
guys? Because I know so many people. I know at least 100 people that I've met that wanted to get into Australia that they've gone to New Zealand first and then into Australia, which is really
Y-
interesting. I don't understand.
Yeah, and like the pathways have gotten harder and harder for people to migrate to, which, you know, is not what you hear on the news, but is the truth of someone who worked in the area for a very long time. Like it's actually much, much harder to have permanent residency pathways. But we were just lucky, yeah. So it was just a complete roll of the dice where we ended up. And then Perth, I'm not sure. I think it was coming from Dubai. We did go to Sydney and we did go to Melbourne, but I think Dad just really liked the weather and the slower vibes of Perth.
Oh, very interesting. My
Mm,
auntie, I think, just back to what you were saying before, I think it took over, I could be wrong, like over 10 years to get her from South Africa to get here. She
yeah,
was a lot
yeah,
older, so it's different with like skills and all that stuff. I'm like, that is a
yeah.
long time, especially when your family's here as well. But yeah, not that easy as you would know. And
Takes
then
ages, yeah.
what was your favorite place to live outside of Australia?
When I was a kid with my parents, Dubai was, you know, it also wasn't the Dubai that it is now. It was a very, very long time ago that I was a kid, and it was just, I don't know, like we went to an international school, spent a lot of time traveling around there, which was really nice. But in my older years, like definitely Tanzania, I lived there for 2 years, which was just so much fun. East Africa, like you're just spoilt in terms of travel there. There's just incredible places to see, like both Kilimanjaro, the Serengeti, and Zanzibar are in Tanzania. Like it's just this amazing country with a lot of beauty in there.
Did you ever consider going back?
I really want to. I really, really want to. It's just my career kind of, it got to a stage where it was like there's actually no higher that I can jump
Oh,
in
nice.
this particular area without a master's. So that's why I came to Melbourne to do my master's. And then I always meant to go back overseas, but I just never did. I liked Melbourne too much in the end.
I get that. And going,
Yeah.
I love Melbourne as well. I'm the first one born here in my family. Everyone's from South
Wow.
Africa, and
Yes.
we all like Melbourne very much so.
Oh, wow. Where in South Africa are you from?
I'm not, they are. They're
Oh, right. Oh, that's right. You just said you were born here.
No,
Sorry.
no, no.
Yeah.
But people
Yeah.
always like, you're South African. Like, I have no affiliation to South Africa. But at the same time, yes, you were born in Sri Lanka. It's very different because you're like probably like proud of Sri Lanka. I was like,
Yes.
I have nothing to do with South Africa in
Yeah.
Melbourne. So
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
very,
Okay.
we
Okay.
have, yeah. But everyone calls me South African.
Oh,
I'm like, am I? Am I not? I don't know. I don't know my identity around that. Very weird, very long. But
yes.
Johannesburg for most. And then my
Yeah.
dad traveled all around. Um,
Wow. Very cool.
yeah. Forget what I was saying, but I think, oh, with being a refugee lawyer, I was thinking about this the other day. You were the one that had to interview people. That sounds like a lot of responsibility for determining if they would get refugee status. How did you go with that?
I think that's why I increasingly found the work very, very difficult. So in Australia, in Perth for 3 years, I was working with refugees trying to get them visas here. So you're going through the legal process, you're advocating for them, and you're putting the case forward. If it's refused, then you can appeal. There's a pathway, and it's really, really exciting. And it's so exciting when they do get a visa. You can actually see that outcome. But then when I got recruited for the UNHCR, which is like the UN body for refugees, first it was in Turkey, and then I did the same work in Thailand as well. I found that incredibly difficult because then you go from advocating for refugees to actually assessing their cases. So you interview them and you make an assessment on whether or not they should be put forward for refugee status, and then that goes higher based on your recommendation. And I found that really, really difficult because I thought I wanted to do that work because I thought it would be good to have someone like me doing it, because I was just like, I'm really on the side of these people. I really want to do the best I can in it. But increasingly, I was just finding it harder and harder to sit there, listen to these stories, and then weigh whether it was true or not. I just thought, I actually don't want to be the one making these decisions. It doesn't make me feel good about it.
Of course. So then, as you said, there's truth. You don't know if someone's lying or blending the truth, or you, because it seems like you kind of need to be a detective as well. And that's not what
Yeah,
you're there to do, I
it's like
assume.
it's not why I got into the line of work that I did. So I think it became really confusing. And also, like in a courtroom or even a tribunal here, like there's just way more resources. And in terms of, there are witness statements, there's documents as evidence, there's people you can talk to, and also if it is refused, you can appeal,
Yep.
which wasn't the case within the UN. Like, so you can appeal, but then it's not looked at by an independent body, it's looked at by the UNHCR itself. So I was just finding that whole process just difficult to make peace with.
This could be the dumbest comparison. It sounds like Australian Idol, where you can only bring in a certain amount of people. You can't come back in. Maybe you can try again a year later. And it's kind of just, up to you or the judges. But yeah, that
Well, maybe if you could get everyone voting in on their phones, it would be a fairer process. I don't know.
that's what we should do, actually. Like you get
Yeah.
like a 1 minute TikTok reel to plead
Yes.
your case. I
Yeah.
think we're onto something there. And
Wowie.
yeah,
Yeah, just yeah, entertainment
yeah,
and politics.
yeah.
This is what we need.
Well, I think that's what's going on already, but that's hilarious. But this is
Yeah.
also a not as bad comparison, but it's sort of like a vet where you want to help the animals, you want to care for the animals, but unfortunately, most of the time you're putting them down. Not that I'm saying you're doing that,
Oh my
but
God,
no,
that was a terrible
no,
comparison.
no, no.
I wasn't putting anyone
No,
down.
but you know the sense like you've gone to go and help someone, and then you realize that there's another aspect of the job that you didn't necessarily realize or think about or sign up for, and that regard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but also the scale of the problems, because I think in Perth, like it's one of the most isolated capital cities in the world, and already that's in Australia where we don't get as many refugee asylum seeker applications as other parts of the world, just by virtue of the fact that we're not bordered by another country.
Yep.
We're an island. And so when I went to these other countries, like learning the volume of people who were waiting for refugee status, but also, in Australia, if you are found to be a refugee, you get permanent residency here. Like you can set up life here, you can have a family, you can work, you can do all these things, which wasn't always the case in other places. Like you could be found to be a refugee, but that didn't really mean anything unless you were resettled to another country. So it's kind of, even if their application was successful, the outcomes for them wouldn't be great in most cases. I think there's some statistic out there that only 1% of the world's refugees are actually resettled. Like it's so, so tiny. Like the large proportion of people are living in limbo around the world.
Wow. And given all of that
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the help that you've done, how
Sorry, I've
does
just like taken your comedy podcast and made it really serious. This
no,
is
no,
why I
no.
always get in trouble. I'm
No,
like,
no,
I
no.
made it. Yeah.
There's no. It's probably not even a comedy podcast anymore, which is hilarious. But no, these things are important. How does it feel knowing you've made a impact on families, people, whoever? Do you ever think about that
I think
positive
I
impact? I want to.
I think I just increasingly felt like I wasn't making enough of an impact, and it started to feel like maybe I was part of the problem. I didn't know if I was helping. I didn't. There was just a lot emotionally that was going on that I didn't even give myself time to figure out, because I was just bouncing around. Like I do one contract, bounce to another contract, bounce to another contract, and then I just increasingly was like, I don't know if I am helping anymore. And I don't know if I'm making an impact anymore. And I need some time to figure all of that out. And that's how I ended up in Melbourne, just being like, I'll do my master's. I'll really double down on this law thing.
But were you looking to another
Lucky.
area of law? Were you looking for another area of law or
No,
like a
no, like genuinely, my plan was very much like, so for me, like at that place in my career, because you're competing with people from Europe and the States who already have like two, three master's degrees. So for me to go further in the system, I would need a master's degree to properly compete. So I just thought, well, if this is going to be my career that I keep doing, if I figure all of these emotional things out, then I'll need a master's. So that was as far as my thinking got.
interesting? And in terms of, you've also spoken about, the stress of dealing with that, but also your life at the time. You're working crazy hours. There's a bit of burnout. You're questioning things. How did you mentally cope during that time?
So badly, just with drinking, just lots of drinking. And I know that's not everyone, like, obviously, everyone knows that that's a bad way to cope, but that was just the way that I coped. Like, you worked crazy hours and then you went out and then you did it again the next day.
Was this in
That was
Egypt?
just what we did. It was every, like, so Turkey, Thailand, like I feel like it's quite well known in the expat world. Like there's just a lot of drinking because
Yeah.
you don't have your wider communities, you don't have your families. Like you really just have, if you're single, like you really just have your work colleagues and then travel people that you might meet, and you don't have that many responsibilities, like because if you were living back home, you'd always have something on, have something to someone to go see.
Yeah.
Whereas over there, you're just kind of like, okay, I guess we go to the bar.
Yeah. Did
Yeah.
you did you learn a lot about yourself during this period?
I really did. I went from being in like a very long-term relationship to, yeah, being engaged and then canceling that wedding and then being very, very single and navigating through all of that. So it was a real period of just complete upheaval. But the nice thing about periods of upheaval is that you can start again, like it's like everything gets thrown into the air, and then you decide which of those things you want back and which of those things you're happy to let go of, which I really liked.
Amazing. I've got more questions on that. But when you came back to Melbourne, did you feel like a different person?
I felt like I was beginning to be a new person, yes. I don't feel like I'd totally figured out anything yet, but I did know that I was very different to the person who'd left Australia, I would say.
Interesting. And just going back, as I know I've heard this, it's in your book as well. People can check your book out. It's in the episode notes.
Yeah, thank you for actually reading it. That's so nice.
I like that actually. It's always funny when people are like actually, because that's happened so many times. No, it's a great book. I've already forgotten the name.
Standstill.
Standstill. You mentioned this is really interesting to me because you've done a lot of work on yourself since then. You've made it so many positive shifts, and hopefully we'll discuss some of them. But you mentioned that you were the villain of your story, and to me, that's
Mm.
such an interesting uh, phrase to use. Why do you think you were the villain?
I was very much the villain of my story, you know, like I was the one who bailed out on a legal career when I felt that it got too hard. I was the one who bailed out on a long-term relationship. So for a long time, I just thought that I was this person who just bailed on everything when things got too hard, and that was just always going to be me. And then did a lot of work, and work is so boring. It is so much easier to go get drunk in a bar, and you know, and it's so much more fun than doing all this work. But I think I really needed to sit with myself and be like, okay, like what is going on? How how would you like this to shift, or how would you like things to get better? And I think I didn't know that things could be better. I just thought that I was just prone to just ruining things. And I think that's a story that we all tell ourselves sometimes, where it's just like, well, this is just what I do. And it's like, no, just because you've done that before doesn't mean that you have to do it again. There's always ways that you can change, things that you can change. Yeah, so I don't know if I agree with that thing. You know, there's that thing out there where they say people really don't change, and that hasn't really been my experience of
I agree.
myself or my friends and family. I have watched them change in so many different ways, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And yeah, I think we're just in this really lovely period where if we really do want to change, there's so many different tools and resources available to us if we want to.
I agree 1,000%. Everyone I know changes.
Yay!
I've gone through
Yeah.
massive shifts and changes. People I know have, and also, as you said, unfortunately, some people go in a backwards, negative, whatever you want to
Way.
call it.
Yeah, it can go the other way too. Yeah.
Exactly, but that's still change.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
still change.
the core of who you are, like that, this is gonna sound so wanky, like that inner child, like the best aspects of you, that doesn't go away. Like whether it's
Mm.
like your curiosity, your love, or you mentioned family, you still care for your family. You don't lose that when you change for the
Yeah.
positive. You still got
Yeah.
that. Like people still know, hey, it's you, Sashi, but we've just noticed some other wonderful shifts or the way you view life. It's not like you are a completely different person because that's also really bizarre. So it's
Yeah.
like there's like my friend and I often have these debates, and he's like, I'm not sure like we changed that much. I'm like, you have gone through so many positive shifts. He was also a lawyer, he
Yeah.
hates it as well. But you're still in your essence you. The
Yeah.
negative stuff that we create, like we ruin things and all of that stuff, that's
Yes.
not true. And also going back to the wedding as well. I when you said this as well, because I didn't agree when you said that you're a villain. I'm like, I actually think, and I'm going on so many different sub points, and you might know the comedian Daniel Sloss, and he
Yes.
does
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
joke about I don't even remember it anymore, but essentially I think over a few thousand couples have broken up because of his one joke, and
Oh,
yeah,
what's the joke?
it's something about spending time with your partner, and if you don't, I can't remember. It's been so long since I've heard it, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
gone
Yeah.
viral. He's got on like mainstream news talking about this,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
he would say often they'll be like, "Aren't you an asshole that you've broken up so many couples?" And he's like, "If I can say a joke and you've broken
And
up
break
because of it."
that, but yeah.
And I'm like, that's a gift.
Yeah.
Imagine like it sucks in the moment, as you probably know better than anyone else. But imagine being with that person for a very long time when you're not supposed to be with them. There'd just be like a numb existence. It's just like we're meant to live a greater life than that, or I believe that. And I couldn't think of anything worse than being with someone. And I know your partner, previous partner, was a great guy and all of that stuff. Families got along well, but it wasn't right for you. So I always find that interesting when people are like, you're the villain, you broke up with this person. I'm like, no, I've set him free. I'm free. Like our lives will be, and they are so much better. So I'm wondering, has your take on that changed?
I think it's just so hard to know at the time. And I think that's what was really hard. Like,
Yeah,
because
of
you
course.
feel like you're just breaking up just because you want to blow everything up for no reason. Like, this is just what you do. But now it's 10 years later, and he is with the most wonderful woman. And you kind of look at who he's with now and who I'm with now and how differently we're living our lives. And it just feels like everything's in the right place. And I think, but you
Nice.
don't know that that's how it's going to turn out.
Of
You
course.
don't know that at the time. And I think that's what's really hardest, like just kind of making that call without knowing that everything's going to be okay in 10 years. And I remember wiser people at the time, they'd say, "Oh, Sashi, just give it time. Everything's going to be okay in time." And I'd just be like hugging a gin bottle, just being like, how much time? Just so to
Yeah,
someone tell me. And I remember just thinking, if someone could tell me that, okay, in 4 years' time, I'd meet a really lovely guy, or in 8 years' time, I'd just be like, how much time? Because it was that unknown factor that really, really scared me.
of
And I
course.
think, yeah, and I think I couldn't have written about it until I knew that everyone was okay. I think I would be saying a very different story if he hadn't found someone else or I hadn't found someone else, or I just don't think I would have been able to think about it with as much clarity. But now it's just kind of like it's 10 years later. We're great. That's
That
so nice.
I love that, and I love that you're also thinking out for the other people as well. You're a human, you're a normal person, you go through these things. That being said, would be unbelievably stressful to call off your wedding. I think it was 2 months before. Everyone flew to that says everything that people need to know. But I believe you all flew to Sri Lanka. It was 2 months before the wedding. I know that 10 years has passed. You've written a book about it, so we're okay. What were some of the funny things people say? Do they ask for their gifts back? What are anything that springs to mind where you're like, I cannot believe people are saying that to me?
I think it was the certainty with which some people said that I had ruined my life. It's strange the things people say to your face. Like, most people
Whoa.
don't say things to your face. Most people just kind of try to be kind. And I think people who have dealt with big breakups or have been through bad shit, they are probably the best people to turn to because they understand and they tell you what you need to hear, which is that, hey, if you can't do it, you can't do it, and you will be okay. But there are other people who aren't very good at the time, and you just kind of have to stop hanging out with them because they're just kind of like, Sashi, but he's a great guy. Like, nothing's wrong. This is just cold feet. This is just this is just that. And it's like, I wouldn't do this unless something was very wrong. I don't know what the wrong is, but um, I think I learned they do say when your back's up against the wall, like that's when you learn like who to turn to and who not to. And support comes from places that you never could have expected, and support does not come from places you expect. I think that's what I learned at the time. Yeah. But no, everyone was very kind. But we had like a New Year's Eve party that a bunch of people had booked tickets for, and then the actual wedding was supposed to be on like the 3rd of January.
Yep.
So we had this big party, and then on the 3rd of January, everyone was like, if only there was an organized event tonight that we
But
had
didn't
all
they?
flown in for.
But didn't weren't all the deposits paid? I was
All the deposits were paid, but then, like the rest of the money, like my parents did at the time, thank God we said no, but our parents were like, I don't know if his parents said this, but my parents said quietly to me, they were just like, we could just have the party, like the band's booked and the food's paid for, like, and I was like, you can't have a fake wedding.
Can you? That'd be great.
You're not gonna
Would
do
you be
that.
at the fake wedding?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It was like, well,
I was.
everyone's here. We can just make it a party. I was like, what are we celebrating?
Do you wish that you could kind of like go back, experience that moment, and then like flick a switch and then go back to your normal life just to see what that party would have looked like? Or there's no appeal whatsoever?
I think the great thing about writing a book is that you kind of do get to experience all of it again. You kind of do have to go back to those moments and experience all of it again. And parts of it were really funny and parts of it were really painful. And one of the nicest things was sitting with myself from 10 years ago and just being like, God, I'm glad I'm not you anymore. Like it's just, you were very fun and you were so driven. Like sometimes I sit with that person and I'm like, my God, like you were so passionate about work and life and travel and all of these things that have kind of gone a bit more dormant for me.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, just in terms of social justice and things like that, I just feel like I used to be so engaged politically and so interested in world politics, and now I just find all of it exhausting because it just feels like we're watching the same video on repeat every time, and you're like, God, we should just go back to the sea. We really should. I just, yeah.
I get it. And this, just as a side point on that, I think this is really important. I know you had the narrative that you're someone that ruins something like everything, but isn't it really interesting? I'm very big on intuition, and we see the movies where an amazing guy meets the girl and they're like, this is the best guy ever, and the girl's just not feeling it because they, she, this is a stereotypical example obviously, and they honor their intuition and just wasn't right. We need to bring that back because that's what happened with you, that you felt something within, you couldn't put it to words. He's a lovely guy, lovely family, and it just wasn't quite right. And I think that's really important for people to talk about, to honor that feeling, because and you've mentioned this before as well, where we don't necessarily look at our feelings. We can be very logical, but feelings is what kind of like guides us if harnessed in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think inherently, like, something's wrong and you don't know what, and that is very, very difficult. And for me, much more than the relationship I was in, I realized when I was writing the book that, like, really it was so much about me. Like, I just had to learn so much about being confident in myself, understanding what I want, what I need, how to ask for it, how to communicate, like, all these things that would have made me a much better person and a much better partner.
Yeah.
I think. And sometimes you can do that within a relationship if you're really lucky, and I just couldn't. So, um, yeah, I think it's a really important thing to honor your intuition as best as you can. And I think the hardest thing is when it causes so much hurt, because if you could have done it earlier, if you could have done it better, if you could have done it gentler, like I just kept repeating those things in my brain, and then it was like I just did what I could as best as I could at the time.
I think that you should write a movie, and that can be like the opening scene, like kind of like The Hangover,
Yeah.
where I genuinely, I was thinking about this before. I'm like, this would be a great movie, and then I'm planting the seeds for you. And then
Thank you.
you also, going back where you said support came in different ways than what you would have thought. I'll give a positive example after this. But
Yeah.
isn't it interesting when people can be quite negative and not empathetic and say more nasty things? Did you realize that a lot of times people were battling with their own stuff, or they were showing a mirror, or perhaps maybe their relationships weren't great and you were triggering them? There would have been all these examples as well. What did you learn from that end?
I think so much is that just because people say it doesn't make it true, and a lot of the time they'd be like, me and my ex, they're just like, you're meant to be together, you're perfect. Like, it's just kind of the projection of what I came to was they really just want what's best for you, and often they think they know what's best for you, so they're just trying to help. And so, but the hard part was believing that you only get one true love and you've already had it and you've ruined it, so you're just never going to fall in love again. Like, so those kinds of things become very problematic to be thinking about yourself and about your future, about your life.
Yep.
So I think it's kind of take everything people say with a grain of salt, like, and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's what I learned. It's like you're taking all these things that people are saying, and you're like, okay, cool, yes, I am going to keep taking one foot forward, though, just away from this situation,
Yeah.
despite what you say. Yeah.
Very wise because, as you said, when you're getting so, and there was a group WhatsApp as well, everyone's talking about it. People are probably giving you looks and they don't know what to say. And those are the worst. All of these things, you would be in your head so much. You don't want to cause pain to your ex partner and your family, all of that stuff. But there was one of your mum's friends sent you an email which kind of gave you a little bit more clarity or helped you a little bit. Do you remember that
Uh,
email?
I wrote about this and I actually went back through my inbox because I remembered that email, and it was just so kind. Like, it kind of cut through everything else, and it just said, this must have been an incredibly difficult decision to make. Don't worry about anyone else. Like, it was just, I think, I'm trying to remember exactly what it said, but it said something like, marriage is a very important commitment, and you need to know that the person is right when you make it. Like, because I remember her saying later, actually, she just said, it gets so much harder. Like, you think when you get married that you've done all the hard bits, like it was so hard to find them, the wedding was difficult, all these things. And she's like, life gets harder and harder and harder, and you need to make sure that you're with the right person on that journey. And I think it's fear that keeps a lot of people with in situations because they think, but what else is out there? And sometimes you just have to figure that out.
You know what's in this just springs to mind. There's this narrative, and I've seen it so much because we just had wedding season. So as I said, I've been to
Oh, yep, yep.
so many weddings. But there's this narrative that your life is complete once you get married. And I have the
Yes.
best wife on the planet. I know your partner's amazing. But it's like such a so I see a lot of like the single people and they like get really upset. And I'm like, that sucks for you guys. But obviously it's not like you're still an individual. You still have your life. And then I've seen particularly with the girls, not to stereotype, that I probably could say like half a dozen that I've spoken to. There's like, now that I've got my wedding, now what's next? Outside of like potentially children, and we'll talk about that as well. They're like,
Yeah.
what is my life meant to be? I was sold kind of the narrative that marriage was everything, and it's not. And I find that like quite hard because I've seen so many people like they're like, this is the thing that I've looked up for my whole life. Now I have no other goals, which is a shame. And I was like, I don't know what to do there.
Yeah, and I think Jerry Maguire has a lot to answer for that film, There's that whole like you complete me thing. And I think one of the what I really, really love about Charlie, my husband, is that we're both quite independent humans, that, like he's got all of these things that he does. I have all of these things that I do. And I think we learnt that our problem was that we'd both been single for so long and built our independent lives so long that when we moved in together, there was a lot of like just headbutting over, no, I will not cede my space to you, because we'd
Yeah.
spent so long carefully building this life of meaning and purpose, and that we really, really loved. And that then making space for each other in it was actually quite confronting
I'm
sometimes.
sure, and you would have learned a lot.
Yeah, I think especially like once you go through a few breakups as well and you find your center and you're like, you will not shake my center again, where,
This is who I am.
yeah, this is who I am, this is what I do not cede space. And then suddenly it's like, oh, this is a nice man. Maybe we'll make some space for him.
Well, good on you for
That,
shedding some beliefs and allowing that, because you could just be that person and be like, nope, you either change and not me. So that's
yeah,
pretty. What I was saying before was more like one can be as dependent or independent as possible, or as you
yeah,
want, no judgment whatsoever, but more the narrative of completion. Your life is complete. If
yes.
anything, it's the start to a different chapter in your life. And I don't like that your life is ending once you do this. Yeah, I've heard you say this. Life can be very long, and so
Oh,
it's
if you're
just like that.
lucky, it's
Yeah,
so long.
yeah,
Yeah. It's so long and there's so much time to fill. And yeah, I do think that walking off into the sunset thing, it's very strange. I think you're completely right. Like, it's only the beginning, but we're not taught to think about it that way. It's kind of like we won the game. And I
yeah.
think that's why then there's a lot of people sitting around in marriages just being like, and now what?
Yeah. We might have 80 more years or whatever the number is, and we beat life. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting. And you mentioned, which I'm proud of you, of making all of these shifts and positive shifts as well. I know that you've done counseling, couples counseling as well, therapy. You even did an anger management course. Okay, let's focus on the anger management course because you're
I
laughing at
just like, oh,
that.
I want to write a show about it, but I don't know what I want to say just yet about, yeah, because yeah, like I just, when we got together, but also with my ex, like just rage is an issue for me, like just emotional regulation. Like, I come from a family where like it was very much like you don't talk about anything, and then everyone just kind of yells at each other, and then you just pretend it never happened. So not the best model in terms of conflict, because in terms of repair, learning how to repair or learning how to lessen the damage and all of those really long, boring things that it takes ages to learn about, And so much of it came down to communicating needs and all of that. And it was just so much work. Like I'd done so much counseling on my own that I thought that it was all going to be so much easier. And then once we started living together and someone's in your space the whole time and you're in each other's faces the whole time, like it just kind of raises a whole different set of issues where you need to learn how to communicate quickly. But yeah, I don't know how to make it funny yet.
Well, I love that. I still think it's great that you did all of these things. And, the best relationships can bring up so much in ourselves that we need to look at. So
Agree.
that's great. And I'm glad that you look for the comedy angle. I'm the same as well. You laughed the most at anger management of all the other ones. I know you're trying to look for the comedy. Was this like one on one or you're in a group? Was it like a funny, like, don't be angry, take a breath? Like, what were some of the things?
So much of it is like even if you Google anger management counseling, right? Like there's no courses for women that come up. It's all like, are you beating your wife?
Holy
Here's
shit. Oh my God.
here's a course you could maybe take. So it's so male, like you're not even supposed to have anger as a woman, like where it's explosive and it comes out of you and it just you don't know how to control it. And the reason that I took it so seriously was because it's the reason my parents broke up, and it's the reason that my dad doesn't have a relationship with his sisters. Like they're all like this anger and this rage and this fighting has just been such a part of our lives for so long. And again, it was a story that I told myself that, that I was destined to repeat. Like there was no way that I could have a healthy relationship because my parents didn't have a healthy relationship and his siblings didn't have a healthy, like there are these stories that you completely tell yourself. And I just remember dad just being like, you have to break the cycle. And me
Oh,
being so angry about that in itself, because I was like, well, all of you got to behave like dickheads, every single one. And now I have to go be better than anyone else has genetically been in the family ever. Sick.
yeah. I mean, that's pretty big of your dad to acknowledge that the
Yeah,
cycle
yeah.
could be broken and that he
No.
chose you as well.
Dad, as particularly as a Sri Lankan man, was incredibly ahead of his time in terms of mental health counseling, but he never got to figure it out. I think he just experienced so much stress in his life and so much just so many like, and his only way of expressing himself when he was scared, when he was angry, when he was frightened, like it was always with rage. So he just never learnt a different emotion, and I didn't want that to be my story. But it was also incredibly hard. I remember talking to my cousin on my dad's side, and I called her one day and I said, how do you deal with it? Because she's got two kids. She's been in this like amazing relationship with this amazing man for ages, but she has the same rage. And she is much more religious than I am. And she said, oh, Sashi, you need to find your thing. So when I feel like I'm going through a particularly angry phase, I pray and I say, Dear Holy Spirit, and that's what I do. So you need to find your thing. And I remember being in a car park one time after Charlie and I had had a fight. And okay, maybe this is the funny bit because I was sitting in the car and I was like, Dear Barack Obama, please could you make me
Ah,
That's
oh,
it. That's a
start.
good memory. That's a good
Yeah,
memory unlock. I'm gonna write that
you have to
down.
write
That
that
was really
down.
quite funny.
I want your show to be
Um,
anger management, and that's
yeah,
going to be
dear
the
Barack
opening joke.
Obama. I think, like there's just so much I've talked about already and so openly, and I think that the rage is probably the one that I'm most embarrassed about. And I
Ah.
think that's probably why that I haven't figured out how to talk about it yet, because it feels like a big subject that I want to handle carefully
It's really
with it.
interesting that you bring that up because you've spoken about so many other stuff, and we'll see how we go with time as well. But you seem to be a very
Yeah.
open person now. Your book, you reveal a lot about yourself. Also, like you speaking about your dad, for example, how he unfortunately passed away, but part of that passing away, there was a positive aspect in that it really encouraged you to give comedy a go, and it was probably
Yeah.
that like stirred you on because it's your story. So please fill in the gaps. But I think he was always waiting to retire and have fun, and he'll do that later and later, and he left it too late, and that kind of had a mindset shift for you. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
It was, yeah, I think that was just such a significant shift. I don't think I would have gone full time into comedy if that hadn't happened, you know? And so that he passed away in the end of 2022. And then that's when I really gave comedy. I was like, all right, I'm going to smash this hard. And so things really started to happen for me in 2023. So it was very much like connected, I think. And also just watching him because he was always so stressed about financial security. And we were telling him to retire years ago. We were like, you know, my brother and I have been working full time for decades by now, like for so long. We're totally fine. And the mortgage was paid off, everything was paid off. We were like, you don't have anything to worry about. And he was just so stressed that he wouldn't have a comfortable retirement. He was always making up these reasons that he couldn't retire. And then he finally did retire in April 2022, and then he just kept saying that I'm just really tired. I just don't think I can work at this level anymore. And I was like, Dad, you haven't had to work at this level for ages. Like, just come home. And he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in August 2022. So only 4 months later, and then passed away in December 2022. So I think it was in watching him I realized there's something about that mentality. I don't know if it's the migrant mentality, Sri Lankan mentality. I don't know what it is. I just know that there's just no amount of money at which your brain says you're going to be okay now. It just doesn't come. So you just have to give that to yourself. But it's really hard. And I think when I went full time into comedy, like the first 2 weeks, I walked around feeling like I was going to vomit
Mm,
because it felt like,
I'm sure.
yeah, it just felt like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? And I'm just really lucky. Like my partner's incredibly encouraging, and he was just like, you have had 1 year where you have done this. Why don't we just keep doing another year and then another year and another year, you know, where it's just, yeah.
That's amazing amongst, quite a, I don't know what the word is, but obviously very painful experience. And for you to take something positive from that, because it could actually sway you the other way.
Yeah, very
And
true.
and especially, you've had like structure in your life the whole time being a lawyer. You know what each day is going to look like, or the week or the month, even though you were doing contract stuff. But that 2 weeks, as you said, 2 weeks of like panic. What got you through that? Were you like, I'm just going to call them, I'm going to get my job back, or
Yeah,
did?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
tell me.
Give
Yeah,
it back. I'm so sorry. Give it
yeah,
back. No, it was actually reaching out to people ahead of me, reaching out to other comedians, knowing that this experience was very common, where, you don't know that you can make a career of it. And then particularly, I'm so lucky that at the time that I started, there's many other comedians who have already walked this path many years earlier. So like Dilruk Jaya Singha, Nazim Hussain, Lizzie Hu, all incredibly successful, but also once upon a time had office jobs and then had to step away from those jobs to pursue a comedy and a career in comedy.
yeah.
And they were just lovely to speak to because they would be like, mate, you're going to be fine. Like, trust us. And then I also did this video where I said, like, does this feeling ever go away? And I remember like a lot of people who had gone into freelance life said yes. They remember that moment that they decided to go to freelance. Like, because it's not just comedy, it's freelancing where
Yeah.
you don't have a salary and you don't have KPIs, but you also don't have a boss and you also don't have so much to ask for leave ever again. I remember being like, how am I going to get sick leave? And now I'm like, if you don't want to work, you don't work. That's how it works. You don't have to ask anyone. That's pretty cool.
I love that, and I'm glad that it gets easier. I'm yet to experience it, but you've motivated me, so that's great. And I just wanted to have one point. And you mentioned like from the anger management side that there was still potentially a bit of shame around talking about that. One thing which I think is amazing, and unfortunately I've seen this a lot through friends and family as well. And we'll probably have to do a part two, but you've spoken about your fertility journey as well, and I think it's awesome that you've spoken about it. I think there was a few miscarriages, IVF issues, correct the wording. What made you want to talk about that? Because that's awesome that you spoke about it to the world.
That one, to be honest, like as we were going through it, I was finding it incredibly difficult to cope because, and the show this year is about that, but I would say that all of this started to happen in 2021. So I think it takes me a little bit of time to process everything, figure out exactly what I want to say, and then also how to deal with any stupid comments that come my way because, like overwhelmingly it's positive, but then there are always those comments of like, but what about this and what about this and what about this? And so that becomes hard. But the main reason I wanted to talk about it was because I couldn't not talk about it, to be honest. Was, it was such a horrible time. And so much of it is so invisible and so silent. And that all that means is that so much falls on you and your partner to navigate together. And I was finding that with my wider circle of friends, like they were incredibly supportive, but no one really knew how to support us. It was kind of by the time you get to the fourth miscarriage and then like you're doing IVF and you're entering quite a niche club. So I think talking about it online meant that it put me in touch with many other people going through exactly the same things, or people who were 10 or 20 years ahead in the journey of like they really wanted kids but weren't able to have kids, what that looks like, what that feels like. All of those things were incredibly helpful. So I found that it was far more beneficial for me to be talking about it than it wasn't.
That's amazing. But then also to put it into a book, because you've mentioned like previous shame. I think you used the word failure, which I hope your definition has changed. But it's
Yeah.
one thing to go through something and speak about it, even with our friends or family, whoever, but then to put it out to the public, because these things are, way more common than they're not. And I know a lot of the ladies that I've spoken to, they didn't even know about it. Like there was no talking about it. And just in the last few years, it's been way more common. People are aware of it now, and people don't realize, as you said, it's hidden. So I think it's really awesome that you spoke about it. What did you learn about yourself during this period?
I think I learned that it's surprisingly easy to be happy. It's been a surprise, and that doesn't mean that there isn't grief. It doesn't mean there isn't disappointment. It doesn't mean that, there are periods of just a lot of sadness, but I just was surprised that continually I would think, particularly after miscarriages, like it really affects your mood and your body and like everything. Like you just feel like you're never going to be happy again. And then you just are, you wake up one day and the sun's out and you're going for a walk, you're having a hot chocolate in the park, you're like, oh, life's going to be okay. That's nice.
Mm.
So I think finding those pockets of happiness and putting those together and just being like, I think life will be okay. And that feels really nice because it was that same thing of completion, that story that you're sold that like without a partner, you're not complete. Without a child, you're not complete. Without a family, you're not complete. And then you realize that you can, none of that is true, really. Like, I think the people who say that feel complete because they're feeling joy and they're feeling happiness, and that's a lovely thing, but that doesn't mean that you can't get it a million other ways.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
many parts that make us, and it's not necessarily all about like, the other things about us as well. And sometimes the narrative is not so much looking after ourselves. And yes, it's important to care for your loved ones and all of that stuff, but not so much to look inwards and realize where joy is. How can we work on ourselves? All of that stuff as well. Um, why did you say, and I don't think you would feel this way anymore, but you mentioned that there are a lot of failures now. How do you look back going through those experiences? How would you look at it now?
I think I still find what like the reason that I feel shame with rage and like still can't really process that. I feel like with the cancelled wedding, I felt shame for a very long time, and being honest with everything that happened then is easy now because it was 10 years ago. But I still find it a failure in that, not that I failed to get married, but I wish that I hadn't let so many people down and hurt so many people. And so in terms of that, but I think in terms of failure, it's just making peace with that and understanding that you are going to fail, you are going to make mistakes, but they don't have to define you for the rest of your life. I think that's that's what I like. And yeah, they call them losses, like with the miscarriages and with IVF and all of that. And you do feel like a failure, particularly as a woman, because a lot of the time the narrative is the only reason that we're alive is to have a child, and motherhood is the greatest and only adventure that is worth embarking on, all of these things that we're told. And so when you can't do that, it feels like you're not fulfilling something and you're not succeeding. And recasting that and understanding that, okay, that's a path that I can't walk down, but here are 18 others that I can go down. It's just kind of, what can you learn? What else can you do? The fertility window is closing, but there are so many other windows and doors in the house. Like, go through those. Yeah.
I love that. Very empowering. And I spoke about it with my wife as well. She loved it as well. And so
Oh,
many other
cool.
people will love it as well. This is also going to be a part two, but I've been fascinated on
I
this. We'll
love
just
that
get
you're already like, there's going to be a part two.
there's part 10s. We're just, I say all the part twos. Part twos are coming, everyone. I don't know how to organize my life. This is really interesting, and I'll focus on the positive. But you're at a Lizzo concert, and I think Lizzo was saying like
Mm.
love your body, and you realized that perhaps you didn't love your body going through all of the stuff that you had gone through. But then you decided to write a list of what your body can do. Can you tell me what that did for you and your mental health?
I didn't realize what a bad spot I was in, to be honest. That was at the Splendor. I think that was in 2022. We were mid IVF at the time. I was performing there, and I was very happy to be there and was just so happy to watch all this music and spend the weekend having a nice time. But yeah, a part of the Lizzo, I can't remember what she said. She said, put your hands up in the air and say, I love my body, or something like that. And I just went, no, I hate my body. I hate my body for being unable to do this one thing that it is made for and is supposed to be doing. And I was just surprised by the viciousness of that inner thought that came out so powerfully, and realized that I'd gotten to this really, really bad spot. And so, yeah, just kind of really sat with that for a while, and then just started shifting in terms of like, hey, you can't do this one thing, but look at all these other things it's done. Look at all these hikes we've done, the travel, all of these miscarriages that we've gone through, and we're still feeling okay. Like, maybe fertility wise, something's up, but look at all these other things it does every day, you know? So I just really started falling in love with my body again. It was a
Oh,
very
amazing.
long, it was
Yep.
a very long, slow process, I would say. But I started this Pilates class. Feels like such a basic thing to say, but it was just at like my local leisureplex. There was one pump class I do with these two fitness instructors, and then this one Pilates class I do. And everyone around me is, because it's a local council gym, there's just people of all ages. And I look at these seniors, like they're like between 60 to 70, and they are just doing all of these awesome things. And I remember just watching them and being like, I hope I can do that with my body at that age. And at the rate that I'm going, I probably can. And for that alone, I have to be grateful.
That's amazing. And I'm a big fan of lists as well, because sometimes when you see you put pen to paper or you keep on repeating something, it changes the mindset as well. That is so cool.
Yeah. Oh, I just realized the reason I was at a seniors class, I was like, why was everyone between 60 and 70? I'd actually done my knee at the time, so those were the only classes I could go to, were like the easier ones, that took it a little bit easier. And that was why I was like, why was I in classes with 60 to 70-year-olds? But
I'm
yeah, those were the
80.
only ones I could go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Surprise. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
hilarious. And
yeah.
last question before we go in and I ask people how they can follow you and all of that jazz. How does it feel now? We spoke about you being the villain of the story. You're now the hero of your story. Do you feel that way?
I don't feel like a hero. I feel like a person who shares far too much about her failures.
But in that, you
But
are inspiring and yeah.
in that, I am meeting many other people who have been through similar things, and hopefully feel a little bit of contentment with knowing they're not alone. I think that's the main thing I try to take out of all of it.
That's great. And I know you know this all, but the hero doesn't need to be like Superman flying and saving the burning building.
Yeah.
It can just be sparking a little bit of inspiration in one person. So you've
That's
done that.
so nice. That's so nice.
You've done that a thousandfold. Before we go, how can people follow you and keep up to date with you?
I am on everything. So just across, I'm on Instagram at Sashbombs and on TikTok as at Sashi Comedy. And those are the main two places to follow me. Or come watch me on tour if, you live in the world somewhere. That would be good.
Amazing. I'll put that in the episode notes below. Thank you. I admire the work that you've done in yourself. You have a very uplifting and empowering story. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael.
What I really love about this conversation with Sashi is her honesty around growth and the reminder that just because you've done something wrong or you're not proud of parts of your past, it doesn't define who you are or who you have to become. But here's the shift. You're not stuck. Sashi pushes us to ask better questions. How do you want to grow? And what can you do today to be better tomorrow? Mentally, emotionally, long term, because change isn't accidental. It comes from looking inward, breaking patterns, and getting the support when you need it. And maybe the most freeing idea that she leaves us with is this. Just because you've done something in the past doesn't mean you have to do it again. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy and life.